So first we will welcome one of our hosts for this seminar, which is RTÉ, the Radio and Television of Ireland. So RTÉ is just celebrating 100 years of the beginning of radio in Ireland. And so for this case, they will talk to us about their large-scale digitization project. And so this presentation will be presented by 4 people. So Miroslav, who's the manager for archiving and preservation. Adrienne Warburton, who's the media coordinator, metadata and archiving. Anja Mahler, senior archivist for sound, for the sound collection, and Gavin, Burke, senior archivist for video. So please welcome to the stage.
Morning, thank you all. So yes, we'll talk about, it's a bit of a progress update where we are, but also our journey, how we got to where we are right now. So we'll just move on with the, yeah, this works. So when I joined, there was a brief that we need to do mass digitization. The funding is secured. The head of archives, Breed, has secured all that to be in place. And now we needed to shift focus because we needed to maintain our busy day-to-day life in the archive. And the first challenge was to allocate the appropriate leads for each strand, which is my colleagues who will present here, and John, who's sitting somewhere for film in the audience, to deliver on this project. So it was a bit of a challenge because I was the one who kept pestering everyone, oh, what about this project while you're doing your day job? And, but yeah, the team delivered. So then we needed to understand how could we do this mass digitization? How there's so many different ways, so many different schools of thought. There's this very crude definition of outsourced versus insourced. I was just talking to one of the representatives from vendor community who has one view. You can rent equipment, you can outsource certain services, you can outsource a lot of services. We went with a hybrid mode for video and audio and doing in-house for film for now. So it's a mix of different approaches, and I think it's very important to stress here, even when we talk about outsourcing mass digitization, it's only the act of digitization in our case that's outsourced. But all the pre-digitization work, which is quite substantial, and post-digitization work, which is quite substantial, is in-house. So it would be very wrong for somebody to walk in and see this and say, oh yeah, they've just outsourced it to somebody and handed it to somebody to worry about, which is far, far, far from truth. There was a lot of things to worry about. And the other thing which we thought was very important during the market sounding, to see what's on offer on the market, so we don't look for something that doesn't exist, so we don't specify tender for some ideal scenario which nobody can deliver on. And also we needed to see, okay, how should we scale ourselves? What's the sweet spot for a daily or monthly or quarterly volume of digitization? Because service providers for digitization services, if they go if they work under their optimum, they're not using all their capacity. Or if we ask them to do too much, too fast, then they might have to have dramatically increased costs for step change, investing in more equipment. So we needed to understand what is the market offering to us, and what can we then play with as options. So the next thing, which we were very fortunate, our RTÉ technology were very engaged with our project, and also they took a holistic view on centralizing infrastructure in RTÉ. So then we are just one of the tenants, be it so that we are probably one of the largest in terms of the size of just the legacy, I think, comes to 7 petabytes. Gavin will talk about that on video, but then there is film and audio, etc. So we're kind of 9. So when it comes to storage, we needed to get technology to meet our business requirements. So we didn't prescribe, this is the solution you must use. We just prescribed, these are the requirements you must meet. And then they will say, okay, well, this is how we're going to. So we define what we need, and they define how that's delivered to us. So that digital technology that was developed, we had some presentations before on the MMC seminar. I remember my colleague was here with me presenting that. So we went for a private cloud just to kind of keep it at a very high level with 3 data centers protected from each, protecting data together. So the data is spread across 3 data centers, all in our private cloud using a public cloud protocol S3, which is AWS. And then we also have a safety copy in the public cloud. So that works quite well. We have full control of our data. And most importantly, when you engage with public cloud, everybody needs to think about exit strategies. So if we want to, if our contract comes to an end with one public cloud provider for storage, we can just tell them, okay, we're now running a new tender and some competitor of yours have won this new contract. So you can just wipe our data. Don't worry about the data transfer, because we'll just upload it from our private cloud to safety copy. So that was quite an elegant solution and quite an important one to have in place. Alongside the underlying infrastructure, we also delivered a project with the media asset management system. And that project is gone live as of a few months ago. So now we're doing a lot of legacy data migration from, I think, 28 data sources. So it's quite a lot of work. And probably the most ambitious part in that sense is that we're also migrating our legacy database to a MAM system. So there was a lot of work by the team done on data modeling and finding a data model that fits all. So in media workflows, people always say, don't worry too much about edge cases. You know, that'll work somehow. But in metadata, you have to think, you have to accommodate for every edge case. There's no such thing as edge case. So that's what we learned in a kind of hard way, but we learned it anyway. That's important. So then, that old chestnut, a question about what do you do with carriers post-migration? So we know there are different schools of thought on this, and a lot of very strongly opinionated views on this point. So some are fortunate to have funding and legal obligation to keep the carriers, so especially when it comes to magnetic carriers, that makes sense. Opticals are very vulnerable as well. A lot of people had that misconception years ago, how they are, all great and they'll last forever. No, they don't. And then some people just dispose of them all. But I know that some organizations have budgets high enough that they can check every digitized piece of content, whether it's audio or video, from the very beginning to an end. So once they come to an end of that, they can tick the box and say, okay, this tape is ready for being destruction, probably eco-friendly destruction. If there's such thing. So we had to make a decision, which is again another hybrid decision for us. So film, yes, we will keep it forever. We have learned that. So I've been converted in 7 years ago. If you ask me, is content preserved better digitally or on film? I would say digitally, and now I would say it's better on film. But the magnetic carriers, we are keeping for the interim period initially for 5 years. And then we will see how many failures we have with digital files, if anything needs to be redigitized. So we don't have strong views on pro or against destruction, and our decision is reflecting our views that, okay, well, let's see what happens. And the last point is about what happens next. So it's another thing that's piggybacking on the options. So QC, we were able to outsource a certain amount of QC to the digitalization service providers for video and audio, but there's still statistical QC, how they call it, a certain percentage that we do in-house. So up about 10%, I think, is the rule that we apply for spot check QC. And quality checking, there's some small percentage on forensic but we kind of shied away from that. It's mostly the spot checking, where we realized that often essence files are quite all right, and if there's a problem on the carrier, there will be in the essence file, so there's nothing that can be done there. We did have one issue with audio where tension arm wasn't serviced, so there was a glitch being heard every now and then, and that got redigitized very quickly. But and also what was important to stress, because of the provenance metadata that was kept during the digitization process, we were able to troubleshoot, or the service provider were able to troubleshoot which exact machine, which exact studer was used for this reproduction. So they found one was the last serviced, and they were able to redigitize whatever couple of hundred tapes that were used on that were gone through that machine since the last service. So just in case there was any error. So that's how important that provenance metadata is. And a lot of people say, oh, why would you care? Yes, we care, and this is why. And one thing that I can share, which is interesting, which wasn't quite expected, that when it comes to QC, post-digitization, most issues we've discovered were about metadata. Metadata, TX date, transmission date missing or being incorrect, because somewhere along the way it got switched to American formats, so 4th of March became 3rd of April, and things like that. Or if it was 30th of March, then it just says no TX date because it doesn't compute. There's no 30th of the third month, the 3rd of the 30th month. So, so those were the kind of errors we were finding, and our service providers were able to rectify them very quickly. But looking into the future, when we decided we will be digitizing all this content, but how do we know that this is one and only time we'll do it, so we don't have to revisit that magnetic media ever again? When Anja joined the team as a senior archivist for sound, she was able to implement digital preservation practice, mainly learned from DRI, I think, and similar projects from this institution here, where this was the first time for us to introduce terms such as submission information package, fixity, file integration checking, and that worked, and we then carried with that approach in video and all other projects, which we find very, very useful, because all that digital preservation practical aspects have proven very, very helpful, because we had errors with file validity, for example, and they were only discovered because we built in file integrity checks in our delivery of submission packages. So that's on a very high level how we made to our decisions and what our decisions were. So Gavin will now start about video first.
Thanks, Val. So our video archives collection. So we had to scope it out first. So prior to going to tender or doing the the market sounding that Miroslav referred to, we assessed our collection and realised that we had 287,000 hours of content spread across Digibeta, Beta SP, and HD cam tapes. And we realised that we had an average duration anywhere between 20 minutes and 2 hours. So in 2023, then we went after our market sounding and we ran a tender process. There was a successful vendor, was awarded the contract, and planning and testing workflows began then at that point in the second half of 23. And with 24 was muted as our go live date to actually start the digitization process in earnest. So prior to getting to that, we did our project initiation document. We signed off of, it covered all aspects of our technical requirements for the digitized assets to be created and the delivery mechanism to transfer the resultant submission information packages back to RTÉ directly to our on-premise storage tier. In addition to this, we had to integrate with our incumbent asset management system and future-proof that integration with our new media asset management solution that has gone live as of February of this year. So that was a challenge in we need to maintain the as is, but also future-proof for the as will be. So that just was additional layers of complications. The main one being that we've sent these tapes off to be digitized, and the digitized assets then would be effectively unavailable and hidden from the user. Had we not digitized it, the user could have still borrowed a tape. So that was the kind of catch-22. But working with our IT department, we came up with a kind of interim solution. So we made a pretend MAM whilst waiting for our MAM, which was fun and time well spent. The digitalization project then was divided into 3 main stages. So we had our pre-digitalization actions, digitalization, and our post-digitalization. So there were specific tasks involved in each area to ensure the preservation, accuracy, and accessibility of that archive material. And this process would then ensure that the archive tapes were carefully prepared, accurately documented, safely digitized, and securely stored, transforming that physical media into a reliable, accessible digital asset whilst maintaining full accountability and quality control throughout. The digitization vendor was not in Ireland, so that brought an extra layer of complexity and nervousness. But having gone through it and our initiation phase, we kind of got past that. Then we move on to our digitization, and sorry, I'm just going to skip through some of this now. So this involved the conversion of analog tapes into digital files, adhering to a strict technical standard. The tapes on-premise with our vendor were assessed for damage contamination, and we used specialized hardware, software, broadcast tape machines following international archival standards. We also factored in, due to the sheer scale, that we would not have the time to verify each and every file that was returned to us. So we included both an automated and manual QC check on the vendor side. Now, we had to correct the homework as well, so we adopted a 10% of assets returned to us would be checked. So this is just an example then of one of our submission information packages. I'm sure everybody has seen this or has done it themselves, so apologies if I'm preaching to the choir. But that's just an overall what a standard package would look like. So one physical asset went, and this is what was returned to us then in the digital domain. So overall, like Miroslav mentioned, 7 petabytes. So we estimate that we're going to get to about 7.8 petabytes, and we're roughly 50% of the way through this project at the moment. So on a daily basis, we receive 7 terabytes of data, 6 days a week, allowing that extra day a week to play catch up should we encounter any IT issues. And that's kind of a snapshot of where we are. So that, we're 101,000 hours have now been digitized. We're onto our 6th batch of roughly 12 batches. But I think the most interesting thing, or the thing I'm happiest with here, is if you just look at the 4th to last in the total column, we have a reject rate of 0.46%, and we've dealt with our oldest carriers have been dealt with. Our oldest carriers now only date back to 1985 when RTÉ adopted Beta SP. But yeah, it's promising, and it just shows that we thought that they would be in a worse state than they are, but the statistics prove wrong. That's it. Thanks very much. I'll hand off to Anja.
I'll try to speak real fast because we're running over time. Radio. RTÉ actually celebrates its centenary this year, marking 100 years since the beginning of radio broadcasting in 1926. So it's really a big milestone for us, and this is how that explosion looks like on formats. Over the past 25 years, RTÉ Archives has systematically digitized analog collections and migrated born digital content from physical carriers. So today we are proud to say that we have derived 400,000 hours of digital content from approximately 200,000 100,000 physical carriers, representing a vast body of music and podcast recordings accumulated through the past century. For the last 2 years, so without data there's also, where there's data there's metadata. For the past 2 years we have been engaged in consolidating metadata from a wide range of legacy archive and operational systems. And just to name a few, there is like relational databases such as SQL, Microsoft Access, Basis, alongside with numerous sidecars in different kind of formats like XML. But we also have tabular data sets, text experts, and we also harvesting metadata from directory structure, so file names and folder names, with the aim to integrate data and metadata into one single media asset management system. This work has involved mapping across multiple schema models while dealing with inconsistent documentation, schema drift, proprietary production systems, and non-standardized metadata practice accumulated over decades. So that was the joy of this year, and I thought that the image of a kripu was an appropriate metaphor for this process. Kripus were information recording systems used in the Andes during the Inca period, and they were constructed from knotted cords of cotton or other fiber, and they encoded numeric and narrative information through color, tension, and not precision. Interpreting them required specialized expertise, and that person was known as a Kripu Kamayak, sounds like archivist, I think, who interpreted the meaning by analyzing the color, the chord thickness, the thread direction, and the position and type of knot. So the process, Adrienne, Gavin, and I have been going through the last 2 years remarkably felt familiar to this, where we often sat down and we must have reconstructed fragmented structures, incomplete context, and evolving systems. Adrienne will tell you a little bit more about how we actually achieved consistency. So I'm just going to speed through my next slide. In the practical how-to spirit of the seminar, I would also like to briefly reflect on broadcast WAV and the PAX chunk that Kate has mentioned this morning, which was standardized by Bibliotech 3285. During our digitization, we embedded descriptive metadata and identifiers within the BAX header. And this was partly because it is best practice, and partly because the tool that ourselves and many of our vendors were using as CubeText Quadriga enabled us to do so with minimal effort and at scale. And it came in handy because recently we carried out a recovery work on a DD bitstream copy recovered from legacy DLT tape backups, which is the predecessor of LTO, where audio assets had effectively been reduced to raw binary data. Without the embedded metadata, reconstructing the relationship between content, carrier, and archival description would have been impossible. And for us, that kind of highlighted how preservation outcomes are shaped years early through collaboration between archives, standard bodies such as DBU, and industry solution providers across workflow standards and systems design. Adrienne, I hope you have time to talk a bit about that.
I will speak very fast. We're still on that slide. So as mentioned, we have recently implemented a new MAM system, and this is known as the One Media Share project within RTÉ. And one of the first steps of the project was to choose a data model that had to work across all of our asset types, so radio, television, and music collections, and each with their own descriptive traditions and cataloguing habits. And one of the key goals was to introduce enough consistency to support reliable search, better collection management, and future reuse of the content and the metadata. But the metadata also had to support broadcast workflows, and it had to move between different systems. The other requirement, of course, was digital preservation. We needed a model that would maintain the context, the rights metadata, the technical metadata, and the access conditions to make it the assets interpretable and usable over time for the archive teams, the wider RTÉ community, and of course the Irish public. So we chose PB Core, because this model is specifically designed for audiovisual materials. It brings together descriptive, technical and rights metadata, and this would help us to align with our preservation requirements and our long-term access needs. So while the focus is on audiovisual content, we also have some ancillary assets within the system as well, such as documents and photographs, and this model enables us to describe these as well. We don't actually have our document or photographic archive in the system as of yet, but we can describe these types of assets using PB Core. And then just as importantly, we needed something that we could implement in a real world project that was standards based, but also that us as archivists, our technology teams and our vendors could work with in practice. And we feel that PB Core gave us a structure that was robust without being too abstract. So I will speed through these now, and these are basically the challenges that we had, and I can safely say that one of the most challenging aspects of this project has been the implementation of the data model. We had to do a great deal of advocacy as to why we needed a standardised data model in the first place. When we kicked the project off, the vendor went ahead and just started creating fields that he thought matched with the fields that we already had in one of our archive systems. So we really had to put a bit of work into rolling back on that, and teaching the vendor, our technology departments, and all of the rest of the project stakeholders why we needed a standards-based data model. We also had to deal with the constraints of the media asset management system, because media asset management systems are not really designed with digital preservation in mind, and we've had to do a significant amount of system bending to get it to work with PB Core, but we've also had to give up a little bit of our ambition to strictly adhere to the system, to the model as well. So that's also been quite a challenge. We also had challenges with using the model so that we could integrate with our other broadcast systems. The metadata, as said before, has to move between the different systems, and it had to facilitate that as well. The other big challenge, and it was touched on by both Miroslav and Anja as well, is the multiple metadata migrations that have to go into this system. I can't remember the total number of migrations that we are doing, but they're significant. So for each of these, we have to do analysis, we have to do some data cleansing. Unfortunately, we can't do a huge amount, and then we have to map them to PB Core. So that's a huge amount of work as well. And within that, we're dealing with inconsistent metadata. We're dealing with different standards, differing standards over time. A lot of the metadata, especially in our main legacy archive database. The metadata was input into those systems way before we had any kind of archival standards in place, so we're dealing with that as well. But we feel that this work, as complex as it is, has given us a solid structure so that we hopefully won't run into most of these issues when we do our next big migration. And hopefully I managed to roll back a little bit of time with that. Thanks.
Sorry, it's my fault. I forgot to put my timer for 5 minutes at the beginning. So we are just thinking in terms of 100 years of RTÉ to date from the first broadcast, and what will we look like 100 years from now, and how do we preserve all the content for all that time, and if some future archivist came from future to tell us, have we done a good job, or should we have done something differently? Hopefully they'll come from the future and gives us a thumbs up. So I'll leave it on this slide, and thank you. Sorry about going over time. I guess we can start our lunch break a little bit later. But if you have any questions, we'll be mingling today and tomorrow, and you can find us. Thank you very much.
Maybe we will have time for one question. Does anybody in the audience have a question? Otherwise, I do. I don't know who was quicker. The lady, maybe. Yeah.
Hi there. Thank you so much for that session. That was really informative. I'm just wondering what elements you were specifically looking for your media asset management system when you were shopping. Sorry.
A very quick answer. A very long list of requirements, which started at, I can't remember how many pages, but we went through the kitchen sink of what we would need. And to boil that down, we then prioritized in terms of kind of tier levels to, 1, 2, and 3 priorities. And one is our main in terms of all of this here and all of these elements, which is the biggest part of the project. And then other elements on top of that. So I think Miroslav said at the outset, we've done a lot of market sounding. We went to a lot of trade shows. We know, of course, a lot of our vendors come to our conferences as well. So we know and we look at their roadmaps as well. And then it is a joint and collaborative decision in terms of the choice between ourselves, technology, there are other users. But I think to Adrienne's point, we had to do a lot of advocacy around our choices being the best choices.
Is there one element that stood out from the one that you guys chose? I'm just really curious about what the elements of a media asset management system stood out to you.
Yeah, I suppose for the system we went with, one element that would have really stood out was the configurability of that system. But now that's a double-edged sword, because we thought it was great until we realized, well, we have to configure absolutely everything. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that question, and I think that discussion can continue over lunch as well.